Good day, good people. I'm going to tell you one of the best things about what my partner Pat and I do. It's pretty simple, but I'll tell you what, it means a lot to us. It's meeting good people, surrounding ourselves with the good people, and hopefully many more to come. But the ones we know, fantastic. And today we have on one of those people, Jennifer Crawford, old friend of good times back in the day and the good guys as they are now. Jenn is a special person, very special, not just a friend, but a person who knows our coffee inside and out as almost, maybe as much as we do, which is an honor. And so, Jenn, thanks for joining us on this podcast. Everybody, I hope you enjoy. There's quite a lot in here that's so interesting about pairings with our coffee in particular, with desserts or sweets or little snacks to have. Jenn herself does a lot of baking, and she also does, we didn't get into it too much on this episode, but maybe we'll do another one about specifically gluten-free baking. And I know she does some sugar-free stuff too. So that stuff interests us. We know there's a lot of people who listen who also have little things they need to do to make their life easier. As you hear a buzzsaw in the background, it's simply because I'm outside. I can't stop getting outside every time it's sunny in the morning. So anyways, welcome to the springtime, everybody. Get ready for a little bit of spring baking. And Jenn will tell you which coffees pair well with some springtime seasonal items. All right, everyone, enjoy this podcast. Take care. Ladies and gentlemen, the good people of the world, we're joined today by a very special guest to the Good Guys Coffee Company, like an integral part of everything that we do. She has been side by side with us, supporting us through all the good times included. Everybody, please welcome Jennifer Crawford.
Hey, everyone.
Thanks, Jenn. I would say you're probably one of our top customers by far.
Oh my gosh, that means a lot.
It means the support, the love has been there since day one, since I known you. You and I connected in a yoga studio in Conshohocken, of course. I don't even know, maybe 3 years ago now. And geez, it's just like you feel like such a good friend. And moving away from Conshohocken was my biggest regret of it, was not being as close as we were in proximity. No more than a mile. You'd stop by after work for your coffee order. You know, that's the stuff that always meant a lot. You're always passing along our coffee to people you knew. So, and that's how Pat and I have prided ourselves, obviously, in growing our little humble operation here, is mostly through word of mouth and people like yourself. So, I mean, you're the originator of that in my heart. I really appreciate you, Jenn.
Well, thanks. I appreciate you guys too. And actually, my story ends where you and I met. And so it is really interesting. A little bit of what I'm going to talk about is why I believe so much in your coffee. And I have a very strong story, I think, about caffeine. It's very interesting. It's really weird. But it just kind of led me to you walking in that studio, and it just kind of like solved all the problems.
The caffeine, the coffee solved all the problems. Wow.
It did.
Well, I didn't know this was going to be a giant advertisement for ourselves, but yeah, you know, I think that if so facto, it will be. I want to hear about this because I don't know that story, Jenn. So
I kept it a secret because, you know, it makes it better if you're going to find out live on the podcast, right? A little bit.
Yeah. Well, we want to hear all about it. And well, please go ahead and start with.
Yeah, might as well get into it.
Yeah, tell me about this. What's this was it a drug caffeine kind of addiction?
Well, not really. So I'm a teacher, and for all my teachers out there, we know that there are two things that every teacher relies on. Number one is that really good pair of shoes that you find that can get through the day. And number two is your caffeine and your coffee intake. And a lot of teachers out there will know that caffeine and coffee intake is multiple cups a day, depending on what your day and who you teach and what everything looks like. So when I was a young teacher and I just started teaching, again, I relied on coffee. I mean, we're at work, you know, before the sun rises most of the time. So you really need that coffee. You look forward to it when you have teenagers or preteens in front of you at 7 a.m. You really look forward to that caffeine. So one morning I had detention, not me personally, but I was I was running detention, which meant I had to be at work by like 6:30, right? And my caffeine was becoming more of a coping mechanism. So I stopped and got a very popular coffee, a very expensive, fancy latte drink, a seasonal one, if you will. Maybe some pumpkin, some fall inspired stuff going on there.
First guess, pumpkin, yeah.
Yeah. I splurged and got the big one. I was so excited. I get to school. I get out of my car. Side note, I had my favorite shoes on, going back to that shoe story, which I get out of my car, not awake. Someone came up behind me to talk to me, and I dropped my coffee all over my shoes.
Yeah.
Thought I ruined the shoes. I was like panicking about how I'm going to get through the day now. Lots of emotions, right? I started crying in the parking lot because
you're going through some other things at the time.
Right.
I did, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do this day. Someone very close to me at the time was the teacher across the hall. He pulled up and saw me crying in the parking lot with my coffee and ruined shoes. And he said, I think we need to have a conversation about your caffeine intake. He was a science teacher. He was actually a scientist. So he gave me a lecture on how caffeine is actually a drug. And I was like, oh, right, like, no way. Found some research, thought it is. He was not wrong with that. And his main point was that we don't need it. We think we need it. And that might have been around what I was feeling at that point in time. Mm-hmm. Needless to say, I did call my mom and make her go buy me another coffee and bring it and drop it off to my school so I could get through that day. So at that moment, maybe I was like, all right, maybe this is true, right? Maybe I'm a little addicted to the coffee.
It's almost a rock bottom moment for you.
We're there. We all will go through it, I had my own little awakening a month ago of like, oh man, each time I have a cup of coffee is doing less and less for me. And I had to take a 12-day hiatus. But I went through periods of those learning processes to become familiar with how my body was affected by, yes, the drug of caffeine. And yeah, makes sense to me. Go ahead.
So after that conversation, because I was trying to use his input, show him I was using his input in my life, I didn't touch caffeine, not even just caffeine for 3 years. I was completely off of it. It was a hard adjustment, right? Like you have to tear yourself off.
There's withdrawals you go through from it.
Yeah, definitely.
So no coffee, no caffeine, no nothing for 3 years. And it was a struggle. I mean, I was at work by 7 a.m. I was in the building before 7. So it's hard. It was really, really hard. Until I was teaching high school 3 years later, and someone just brought me coffee to my homeroom. They literally were like, here, I love coffee. I think, this would brighten up your day. And I was like, okay. Aww. So I had it. And I was like, oh man, how did I go 3 years without this? However, I started getting, sweats, heart palpitations, anxiety through the roof, sleep issues. And I was only having one cup, it was not an exorbitant amount. And I'm like, oh man, what is going on here? So started researching and found that caffeine or the pesticides on the coffee could cause all that. So it might not have been the caffeine. So I did a lot of research. It probably was another year of research. I tried adaptogenic coffees. I tried mushroom coffee. I tried decaf. I tried Swiss water decaf. Nothing really seemed to cut it, right? Nothing really did what I wanted from the coffee. And I wasn't looking for the caffeine jolt at this time. I was looking for the experience of the coffee, the taste, the smell, the comfort. And then, so I was really like, what do I do? Couldn't really find or settle on anything. And that, Teddy, is when I met you. I met you and the other people at the studio were buying this coffee. And I was like, wait a second. Yeah. People are getting coffee at yoga. This is great. Come on. So I, tried a couple per other people's recommendations. And I really just fell in love with it. But my biggest thing was that I was not getting the sweats or the anxiety. I was sleeping fine. Yeah. I wasn't getting heart palpitations. So that was really what made me be a believer of your coffee. And that turned into me making it for anyone that would be around long enough for me to shove a cup in their face.
Enforcing my belief in it too, because you're not the only one to say these things, and myself included, actually. In fact, I won't drink other coffee anymore. And so if that makes me a snob, fine. But the truth is, it treats me very differently than does other coffee. And so whatever, I get high on my own supply now, and that's how it is. I can accept that, and I've learned my own limits and my own ways of moderation, and I like to break rules occasionally anyways on those rules of moderation. But to know thyself is number one. So yeah, you went through a period of doing that. And yeah, I would say the same thing, and maybe for Pat it's the same, because we don't really talk about, when Pat and I are together having coffee, we don't do it for caffeine. And by the way, I just learned, Pat and I just did a class with a Widener professor, and I literally, either I've learned this and forgot it or whatever, but the caffeine doesn't make more energy for you. What it does is inhibit the brain chemical that induces tiredness. And it just kind of says, nope, like, no, you're still good, buddy. And so it doesn't give you energy. Instead, is that right, Pat? Am I saying that?
Yeah, you're almost spot on with that. Yeah.
Almost, I'll work with that. Almost is good. Like, we do it for the experience, and to meet someone who, and I think a lot of the people who go with the Good Guys Coffee does the same. It really is the experiential level that when you get to enjoy what you're having, makes a big difference. I'm with you.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially if it makes you feel good. I mean, we always say, I mean, we went into this with we knew we were going to go with organically grown, the cleanest coffee we can find. Yeah. And it basically is for that reason. I mean, you're learning along the way that coffee is one of the most chemically ridden crops you can get, especially considering it's, for me at least, something that I consume every single day, multiple times a day. It might actually be the thing I consume the most in my life. Yeah, you would want that to be a clean substance, and basically exactly what you said, Jen, is, and it's great to hear that. And Ted also mentioned that you're not the only one that has told us this, is that it actually doesn't, our coffee doesn't affect them. And that makes us extremely excited.
Yeah.
To hear that.
Yeah. So tell me more about, like, were you hesitant to try it at first? Like, was it something you were just noted that it really just not affect you, and you noticed right away? You're like, oh, I'm having this coffee right now.
I was a little hesitant to try it just because in the wellness world, they do give caffeine a bad rap. A lot of my research, especially if you're dealing with anxiety or, sleep issues or adrenals, anything, they really say no. Coffee.
Right. It's usually the first, I mean, I feel like anything, if you're having any type of health issues at all, usually the first thing a doctor tells you is stop caffeine. It's always been that. Now, I know what you mean.
Yeah, so I was a little nervous to try it just because I've been off of it, and it was such a process to get off of it. But I did. I tried it just because I missed it, and I missed the experience of it. But when I found that it didn't, and then researching that coffee can actually be good for you if it's sourced properly, but that is with anything in health or wellness, like too much, is a bad thing. But the sourcing, it's not necessarily the actual item, it's the sourcing of the item and the quality. So once I really dug into what you guys sell and looked like, wow, this is the only one I can find in the area, and it's so good, I literally was making it for everyone. I brought it to my office at school. I had friends that were football coaches. They would stop in. I would make them coffee before practice, just because they're trying to get through their day too. And it was I was just spreading it all around, and that's for. Actually, I don't think anyone knows this, but Jen is the person that gave us the idea to sell sample packs. She ordered them. It was this past holiday season. And she came to me when I was dropping off her order, because I live right down the street from her. She was the one that wanted sampler packs to give her coworkers, friends for the holiday season. And it just kind of gave us the idea, like, hey, this is something we can sell. I mean,
it was just a simple idea of, hey, let's, people don't always know exactly which type of coffee they like, so why not let them choose for themselves? And Jenn was the person that gave us that idea. So
speaking of samplers, this is where we want to go next, because you've evolved from no coffee to our coffee, which we're honored to be part of. But then you did this amazing thing that just kind of it just occurred to me with you sent us a file of what can you get, like, you make amazing desserts. Pat and I have had these desserts. Everyone's just gonna take our word for them. We were gonna eat them on camera together. We didn't get a chance to because I ate them. I couldn't wait anymore.
They wouldn't last, yeah.
And so it's hard to coordinate those sorts of things. But no, everyone has to believe that we can speak for these desserts. We're not just joking with you here. And what you've done, which has shocked me, is you've learned our coffees just as well as Pat and I know them. And I feel like you're almost more qualified, which embarrasses me on my own skills to talk about the coffees. But I want to hear you talk about, because I know that you do a specific type of baking too, because you have to eat a certain way and what have you. So you're familiar with what goes with what. And like, I'm honored that you have such a strong suit in knowing what each of our coffees are and what they provide for what you make and what you love to do too on the side. So I don't know, maybe just start by telling us, how long you've been baking and what made you really go full throttle into it, because you do a lot of different baking things.
So I've been baking. I have distinct memories of being like 5 and having a little apron and doing the Christmas cookies.
That's
like
cute.
that was in my jam.
No easy bake oven. Was it all real deal?
I did have an easy bake oven, but it was not what I wanted, man. I wanted to get in that oven. I wanted to get those cookies in there legit. So I've always loved baking. I think I got that from my mom for sure. She just always likes to make people feel warm and comforting, and I got that attribute from her. And everywhere she goes, every meeting, to work, all her friends' house, she always brings a baked good. So that was just a part of my life, and that's how I am. And that's kind of like, for lack of a better phrase, that's how we express our love for other people. Is that we want to feed you.
We want the joy that you bring. It really is. So I appreciate that, definitely.
And someone that I do have food allergies, so I am allergic to soy and gluten. So I'm borderline celiac, and I have celiac that runs in my family. So when I was diagnosed with that was all around the same time that this coffee stuff was going down. I would like to infer that probably a lot of it was linked, with health issues and whatnot. But I had to revamp and revisit everything. And that's why I did so much research. So I had a period of time where I couldn't bake because I was like, I can't eat this. What's the point? And had to revisit the fact that, yes, you still can do this, and find different ways to bake. And that's what helped me focus so much on like ingredients and how things pair. So if you can break things down to taste, you can make things taste great because you can pair them properly. So when I think the reason I know so much about your coffee is because I talk to you guys all the time, and I'm like asking questions and have these very long nutrition conversations just because I love talking about that. Really dove in this past fall. We're mid-pandemic at that point. Was my way of trying to spread joy to people. Was like, man, how can I amp up this baking? And was thinking about, well, what do we like to eat with baked goods? We love dunking them in coffee or tea, right? Like that's the best way. So
absolutely,
about how to pair them with something was like, that's kind of just what I started thinking about as I was baking in this fall and winter. So I've had almost all of your coffees. I believe I've had every one. So knowing how they taste, I was really thinking about how well they would go with other flavors. So that's kind of what I want to like dive in with right now, because, I know we're going into summer, which would be like iced coffee or like, coffee smoothie season. But, moving into that fall and winter, you guys, you want to like, you have an apple pie. Which one of these coffees go well with it? Pumpkin pie,
So you're prepared for the whole season, if you would, all different seasons. And maybe I'll have to ask you too, is this something, maybe we'll make it look, I think it looks fine right now, but I'd love to spread this information about what you have here, what you're about to go into too. Is that okay if we maybe do that?
Absolutely. Now, again, I'm no expert. I have no training whatsoever. I don't have any culinary or pastry chef or any training. All of this was just my own input and what I've learned through conversations with you guys and just trial and error.
In Buddhist terms, practice is the enlightenment, not the study of it or whatever else. Like, to be a master of anything, you really have to apply yourself many hours to it. And if I know anything about baking, is that it takes time and patience. So I am, and plus, like I said, we have tasted your product, so we can trust you to know what you're talking about, despite your lack of culinary degree or whatever you want to, So don't worry about that. And Pat and I do.
There's no right or wrong here. There are some. There's some that people, there's some that you could say go better with things than others. Actually, as I'm looking at your chart that you made here, that I know you'll get into, you're pretty spot on with a lot of these pairings. Just from, I'll briefly just say that usually you would pair lighter roast coffees with lighter flavored foods, and the darker ones obviously with more savory foods. So basically what you have here is pretty good. So I'll let you get into it.
Yeah, please take us through where you want to start. What do you go by coffee? Like when you bake, do you think first baked good, then coffee, or what's your process?
I usually start with the baked good because, like, first of all, like seasonal, right? We all have different things, and I like to eat seasonally anyway. But you go into that fall, everyone's talking pumpkin. Christmas is cookie season. It's just how we are. Now that it's spring, I'm craving pound cakes. I'm craving things that have like berries and blueberries and all that stuff in it. So even how I bake is seasonal. But I would argue that most of our appetites and palates are driven by the season and the weather.
Absolutely. And as you say, in springtime, going into summer, isn't it more fruit? Like, that's what comes to mind, and lighter food for your appetite and whatnot. I mean, maybe I'm not. What's that?
It's hot, right? Like, it's hot out. You don't want it. Like, your body doesn't want those heavier dishes.
Gotcha. Oh, that makes enough sense. Yeah. That's why I pack on pounds before I hibernate for the winter. Right? Is that why, like, Thanksgiving comes around and you're just like, well, it's time to put it all in, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, maybe we'll start with spring. What are we thinking for spring?
Well, so with your spring, since it's lighter, I would talk about your original brew and the Alpaca, just because they're a little bit lighter. Compared to the darker. They're also labeled as the medium or medium roast. You guys don't have any light roast. So the original brew, which obviously is your original one, and it has a lot, right? It has many different beans in there. It's not just one kind.
Yes, it's a blend. It's a blend of beans. Yep.
That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah. What you have, and it's no secret, it's our Honduras. They're roasted differently than they are by their single origin, but it's the Nicaragua, which is the sloth, and Honduras for the Toucan, at a certain ratio mixed, and away it goes. And I love that the first thing you say about it is traditional coffee flavor, because that is what I call the coffee drinker's coffee, the original brew. It's the traditional coffee. Yeah.
Yeah, if you are someone who just drinks like a normal coffee, like, you will hear people just order that either at a restaurant or what they're looking for something like, I just want the normal coffee. And by normal, they mean like that very standard coffee flavor, not too much other flavorings or pairings, nothing really bold or overpowering there. And your original brew really like hits the nail on the head with that one. So if I was baking, things I would pair with that were things that are a little bit lighter and fresher. So things that have blueberries in it, more muffins. Let's see, what else?
Muffins. I wish we had the physical food now. I'm regretting. But I picture what you're talking about, and it's hitting my palate just through serious mental thinking on what you're saying. Yeah.
And like berries, maybe a little bit more berries, since they're like have a little bit of a pop or a spring in their step. That would go well with the more traditional coffee flavor.
And that makes sense, because I mean the tasting notes on these two, the brew and the blend and the Alpaca, is they're fruity. They're lighter, obviously. They're a lighter roast, but they also are in tying into springtime. They both have strong floral notes in them as well, so that would easily tie into some of the baked goods that you were just talking about. As far as they also give it. Those are two of our nuttier flavored coffees as well. So things like muffins, and I'm looking at your list here. Just cinnamon in general. Just those are very good French toast.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, the Alpaca, you hit it on the head with the coffee cakes, pancake, maple, French toast. I'm sorry giving that away, but like with the Alpaca, that's right. That is so right when you say that.
Because the Alpaca does have, we even say it on our packaging, the cinnamon taste of the Alpaca as well, which the original brew also does. But yeah, the Alpaca with those breakfast desserts.
Yeah, that's an easy way to remember it, actually. Right, that's a good one, Pat, to say like it's if you think breakfast sweets and real fruits, love light stuff. Syrup. Oh, I love syrup. Who doesn't love syrup? Like real good syrup, like organic kind. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Sorry.
No, I mean, who doesn't love syrup?
Yeah. Thank you.
And the Alpaca is my favorite. I absolutely love it. I would all day, every day. That's the one, my go-to. I would say like an amped up original brew, right? Like it's the same baseline, but I could just taste the chocolate, not like I'm drinking hot chocolate, but you get that light aftertaste of like it's hinting toward chocolate. So that's why I love that one. And I would really think that's why it would go so well with a French toast or a pancake with the maple syrup, all that stuff, because it has a little bit of a sweeter taste than the original brew. So you can have a little bit more sweetness with it without being too oversaturated with that sweet flavor.
Right. It's definitely, sorry to interrupt that. It definitely is more mild in comparison to the original brew. It's not as tart as the original brew, the Alpaca, and it's mild. So especially with the hint of chocolate, it has a little bit more bold of a taste. So with that, it's perfect with chocolate.
Now, we were talking about baking gluten-free. Are you doing these sorts of things gluten-free? Can you do like pancakes and muffins? And also, can you share your gluten-free pancake recipe? Because my wife can't. I mean, between us, how do I say this? The pancakes have fallen flat, and I don't mean that in a good way. I mean, like we need some good gluten-free. Maybe we'll share that after podcast. So you're shaking.
My plan is to also after all of this to put out there some recipes that maybe even include some coffee that I know, Jen, we've talked about in the past that you can share with us that we can post.
Absolutely. And yes, so you can adapt all of this stuff to a gluten-free, grain-free, whatever your diet, right? Paleo, whatever however you're eating, you can always adapt these things. I prefer what works best for me and my recipes is I like the almond and coconut flour because that gives you a little bit more of the baked goody feel. Some of the other flours are a little bit more grainy. And then there are some schools of thought where you can have like 3 ingredient pancakes where it's like banana, maple syrup, and like forget what the other thing. And it just is like, they taste good, but
texture's a little off, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think we've been getting too experimental with our flour. I can't pronounce the flours anymore. That's what I'm talking. Yeah, all right. Almond and coconut. I'll go with that.
Yeah. So then moving to like the darker.
This is my side of things.
So I never had dark coffee until I tried your Black Dog. I always stayed a little bit more like medium or light roast. So I never really had dark coffee. I was a little intimidated, not going to lie.
A lot of people are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Until one of our yoga friends, Teddy, was like, no, you got to get the Black Dog. And I was like, okay, well, here we go. We're going to try it. And that was one I love. So I'll start with the Black Dog because I think this one is my number one to bake with and pair.
Wow. This was my guess. And I want to hear your reasoning because I'm not the expert here.
It is a very bold coffee in your face flavor. And the reason that I like to bake with it is because it can stand up to stronger flavors. You still get the coffee and you still get the other flavor without either of them being a little bit weakened or mild or overpowered. So the black, and because there's not too many other notes in the Black Dog, it just is like coffee. It really can stand up to a lot of these other flavors.
Ooh, I love the way you describe that. Yeah. So you're not trying to, you're working well with each pairing here. And this is helping me learn. Pat's more the pairing person in actuality.
Yeah, I mean, from what, like I said, from what you've said, Jen, this is pretty spot on, because of the Black Dog, some very strong tasting notes within that coffee are brown sugar and what I put, cinnamon as well. And it has a more caramelly flavor to it, and as well as, well, it is bold. It is very bold. And I actually see you put that numerous times on bold. Yeah, it's just an all around, it's a full bodied coffee, which goes great with baked goods. It might be one of the best ones we offer that is for baked purposes. So.
This is definitely like my fall coffee, because I put the cinnamon right in that French press with this, and I get that.
Yeah. I do that too. Yeah. I used to tick Pat off because I would occasionally,
because it permanently tasted like cinnamon no matter what you brewed in it.
Sneak it in. I was always, I don't know, experiment, you know. And this is when we lived together, of course.
Yeah. Right. So this is the one, pumpkin pies that, you know, if you want to bake with it, those fall very, you know, PSL, that latte flavor. If you want that, this is the coffee that I kind of go to. If you want to make your own, you know, fall latte, this is the one that I would use, because you can put the cinnamon in it, you can put the chai spices, you can put like the cardamom and the ginger, all that stuff can go in here, and you still taste the coffee. So this is definitely the one I make, like donuts, like I baked donuts, not fried, and there's like different schools of thought within donuts, and I like this with it to dunk it in, right, like that cinnamon sugar donut. And with this is like, that's where it's at for me. So cinnamon flavors, like you guys said. Also, I find peanut butter goes really well with this one.
Ooh. Reminds me of a whiskey, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Well, peanut butter whiskey. Like it's kind of, because I would not have thought of that, but the taste somehow does go well together. They stand out on their own and just complement each other because they're simple. They're just one flavor note kind of deal.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then even some more stronger flavors, like a cranberry, right? I feel like a cranberry would go good with this in the winter, because again, with the one note thing, cranberries are they're not used that much because they can be very strong.
Overpowering. Yeah.
So this one holds up to it. So, you know, Black Dog, if you're baking with it, I actually make a pumpkin spice latte pie where I put the coffee in the pie. And you eat it, and it's fantastic, right? Sounds so great. If you're baking with it, this is the one that I would definitely recommend. Just because
does it come out like a cup of coffee taste, or like, is it? I don't know if I've had anything like that where it's just baked into it.
It does, not as strong. It's very kind of like aftertaste-ish a little bit. It's a little bit milder, but you get that like that latte feel.
Baking with coffee, it really all depends on actually how much you use. You can, and it goes actually with cooking with coffee as well. It can be overpowering if you use too much. If you like that, then go for it. If not, you can use a tiny bit amount of coffee, and what really it does when you bake and cook with coffee is that it brings out other flavors of other products. So if you don't have to have, you can bake with it without really having an overpowering coffee flavor.
All right. You got to share that with me when the fall time comes. Yeah. Well, tell me about the Toucan too, because like that's a different one. That's our, you know, it's probably, I'd say might be our most unique among all the coffees as far as the taste. It kind of presses away from the same category as a lot of our other coffees, I feel.
I love the Toucan. That's currently what I'm drinking at the moment. I like it. Has a more of a chocolate presence, I would say. I'm not going to use the word here. Than the Alpaca, and that's like I love chocolate, so that's kind of like why I leaned a little bit more toward this. This is like my treat coffee that I have on like the weekends, or when I can sit with the cup and around, is like when I have the Toucan. So because that chocolate and that dark flavors in there a little bit more present, I would think this is going to be really good with flavors that are a little bit more mild but sweet. So like vanillas, coconuts, pound cake. So things that have that very sweet element but are not in your face sweet, right? So like that very muted but vanilla flavor. It's still sweet, but it's right there. This is what I really like with the Toucan.
Yeah, pound cake makes sense. Is there a gluten-free pound cake?
Yes.
Really?
There's gluten-free everything.
Yeah.
All
As
right.
long as you're using gluten-free ingredients, you're good.
Okay, we'll try that out. And Alexis and you still have to talk about it. She's doing really well sticking to that. Because some just issues, things come up, issues come up where all of a sudden now you have to think about it. Whereas your whole life growing up, maybe you didn't have to think about it. And that's the way it is. But yeah, so appreciate that to know that it's possible is just cool. That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Do you do anything special with the Big Papa?
I do love this. This one I was very, very reluctant to try. And thanks to Pat's persuading on this page, I did end up trying it because it says like berries, right?
Yeah. We've talked about this numerous times on past podcasts and to other people is this particular Big Papa is one that deters people. And we really try to push it out there to make people at least give it a try. And they usually end up liking it like you did.
Yeah, I did like this is the one all winter this was my drink. It's so good, but again, I was very deterred by the berries. I'm like, I don't want that in my coffee. But it's not what you think.
Right.
It has more flavor than some of the other ones where they would like the Black Dog's a little bit more one note. The original brews want more of a one note. This one is a lot. There's a lot of different flavors in here in a good way.
Yep. It is it's the epitome of a full-bodied coffee. So that's why it's exactly what you said.
So if you're pairing this or you're using this to bake, I would try things that are not going to overpower or fight with the flavor because there's so much flavor in this coffee.
Okay.
My biggest inclination here is give me those really dense traditional breakfast baked goods that you dunk in there, right? Like the biscotti, right? That's the Italian version, and scones are the Irish and Scottish version, like tea cakes, those type of things that go in the coffee, right?
Plain donut? Would you do a plain donut in there?
Yes, but a thicker, denser one, not the fluffy, airy, yeasty donut. I would go the baked cake donuts, right in there.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is just because the Big Papa is really unique in its flavoring and has a lot. You don't want it to fight, with the flavors. So also oats, if you make breakfast cookies or breakfast bars, things, oatmeal, that kind of stuff goes with it. Almonds, amaretti, those type of flavors that are all in those very traditional, baked goods. The dense ones are the ones that I think go well with this.
Jenn, thank you so much.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to have you back
Great
with a live tasting. When we get together in person, us three, we're gonna do a live tasting together. Really thank you for your time sharing what you know.
There's so much more we can get into with this topic. So we definitely should have you back on.
Thank you for taking the time to really support us, to really try all of our coffees and in-depth know them like we do. I mean, that's just such an honor to have you a part of this. So thank you, really.
Yeah, thank you.
Everyone, we're going to list some of these things that Jenn has talked about. And we'll see you next time, our friend. I can't wait to have some coffee with you and some treats. So, all right, everyone. Everyone out there, good people, take care. Thanks for joining.